Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to sqadia.com. My name is Mohammad Osama, and we are talking about data handling in medical statistics and research. And the specific topic that we're going to cover in this section is names, labels, and merging data, in which we're going to talk about variable names and labels and value labels. We're going to talk about joining data sets, and we're also going to talk about appending and merging. So, variable is anything which can take any quantity, and there are numerous variables which are actually considered in every research by researchers. And when we are naming the variables in a form, it is different, but when it is about data entry and we are naming the variables, we need to be concerned with some points. And one is that the variable names may need to be less than 9 characters for certain softwares, and for that purpose, we need to keep the name short. And there are other things that we need to be kept in mind when deciding variable names, such as if we talk about SPSS, we cannot give space among the words, and it has to be a one single word without a space, and we cannot use many other symbols, etc., for denoting the names of the variable. So we need to decide what type of name we are going to give to that variable. So when you're deciding the name should be intuitive. It should be something that comes right into mind. So such as birth weight, for birth weight we can write B weight instead of something else, because it's intuitive, it comes right into mind. So use intuitive names such as birth weight for B weight for birth weight to make analysis and interpretation easier. So whenever you look into the variable, it should be intuitive. Whenever you look at the name, it comes right in your mind that what is it actually trying to denote. Change by default generic variable names to meaningful names. So make it meaningful, because whenever you actually open a statistical software such as an SPSS, when you go into the variable view window and you click to add a new variable, it gives itself a new name, such as, for example, VAR1, which means variable 1. Now that is default generic variable name for that software, but it is not useful. You cannot identify, you would not remember that what was VAR1. So give it something, a name which is actually purposeful. For example, SNO denotes serial number. So it is something that you can remember instead of VAR1. So use prefixes and suffixes to denote repeated measurements. For example, if I'm conducting a study in which there are baseline data collection, in which I'm collecting the baseline values for visual analog scale, then short-term values for visual analog scale, and then long-term values for visual analog scale. So I can write it as pre-VAS, which means pre-treatment, and short VAS, which means short-term, and post-VAS, which means post-treatment VAS. So we can use prefixes like this, and we can also use suffixes. But keep that in mind, if you are using prefixes, then just use prefixes, and if you are using suffixes, then just use suffixes. Don't mix them up, because it is going to make it very confusing. Now, variable labels. Now, variable labels are actually another thing in the SPSS variable view window, in which you can actually give a complete label to the variable. And sometimes it happens that you cannot convey what you are trying to identify, or what you are trying to convey with that name of the variable. So for that, you can use variable labels. For example, we give labels to variables in addition to their short names, particularly when the nature of the variable is not variable from the name itself, as I already said. Moreover, although labeling takes time, but it is well worth the time invested, because it helps your work, it helps your analysis pretty much easy. So it allows quick and accurate identification of particular variables in the data set whenever you need them. And let's take example. For example, smoking is a name of the variable you give to a certain variable, and actually it was the smoking habit of the mother during pregnancy. So you can add the label as mother smoking habit during pregnancy. Now, it is very important if you look at it that smoking does not actually convey that it is actually smoking habit of the mother during pregnancy. So this label actually clearly identifies and convey what this variable is intended to measure. Now, value labels. As we already discussed in data entry, that we convert the qualitative variables into quantitative variables, and whenever we are talking about categorical variables, as I gave the example of gender previously, so we can give them certain values like 1 for male and 2 for female, or 0 for male and 1 for female, as already mentioned here. So these are actually the value labels. So in this value labels, we know that 1 stands for female and 0 stands for male. So if you forget that what is meant by 0 or 1, so you can look at this value label and you would know that 0 stands for male and 1 stands for female. So it is helpful to label the values of categorical variables when we have converted them from a qualitative variable to a quantitative variable, or it was a quantitative variable and we made categories out of it. And just in this example in which we have given smoking, yes or no. So even more important when the variable has many possible values and when the actual codes have no intuitive meaning, such as here we have married, single, divorced, separated, and widowed. So this is a marital status. It is a categorical variable and there are numerous categories. So we have given a certain quantitative value or a number to every category, and 1 stands for married, 2 stands for single, 3 for divorce, 4 for separated, 5 for widowed. So this is the variable name and variable label, but this here is actually the example of a value label. And now you can understand what is the importance of value labels in your statistical analysis. Now, joining data sets. In numerous cases, what happens is that, for example, there are 5 persons in a research who are doing data entry, and they have collected a lot of data, and now it becomes necessary to compile all of the data collected by different individuals or different researchers into one file. So that is known as joining data sets, or it can also be sometimes with that we are actually taking data of the same individuals but from different forms. So that also need to be compiled together. So that is once again the example of joining data sets, and such as joining patient details with appointment details and then having a joint analysis set. So joining data sets is necessary when data is entered at different occasions, or it is done by different researchers and we need to compile it. So the compiling can be in 2 forms, either appending or merging. Now, what is the difference between the two is that when joining 2 data sets containing the same variables in different subjects. For example, I have one data set which has the same variables and 10 participants, and another data set which has the same variables but another 10 participants, and I combine them. So this is known as appending. And merging is that when I am joining 2 data sets which are actually different variables for the same subjects, then this is known as merging. Now, always ensure that only one person is working on the data set at one time. There is only one person who is doing the appending and or merging. There can be different people who are actually collecting the data, but appending and merging should be done by the same person, because joining or sorting data sets can quite easily and unknowingly go wrong. So that is very important that only one person should be doing it. People can do the data entry separately, but merging and appending should be done by the same person. Now, let's take an example of appending. So in appending, 2 data sets are joined, and here we have 2 data sets. So in both data sets, we have birth weight, gestation, and head circumference. And here we have the numbers allotted to different participants. And you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10, which means that the participants are different in both data sets, but the variables are the same. So both are the same 4 variables, and the 2 data sets each contain 5 different cases or different participants numbered 1 to 5 and 6 to 10. So the resulting data set has 4 variables just as each of the data set, but it would have the combined cases, which would be a total of 10 cases, as we'd look in this example here. So this is one data set, this is the other data set. We joined these 2 data sets via a process known as appending, and now we have 1 to 10 participants and their birth weight, gestation, and head circumference. Now, on the other hand, let's take an example of merging. Now, here again, we have 2 data sets, and they are also joined, but in a different manner. So both have same 10 cases, but the variables are different. And this we have birth weight, gestation, and head circumference, and this is the same variables, but we have head circumference and weight at a different point in time. So these are different variables, and now we want to join them. So number is common to both data sets, which is used for matching the participants, but the variables are different. So the data sets are joined side by side. So it would be like this is one data set and this is one data set. In appending, we join them like this, but here we would join them like this, side by side, and which is identified by the number of the subjects. So it is denoted by number, and matched resulting data set has 6 variables but the same 10 cases, as we can see here. So we add this with this and we get this. So same 10 subjects but 6 variables instead of 4 variables here and 3 variables here. Now, storing and transporting data. Now that is very important, because once you have collected the data, once you have entered the data, you may need to communicate with other individuals and professionals to share information or to take their help, or if some participant of the research team is in some other area and you have to send the forms to him or her as well. So storing and transporting becomes very important. So it should be filed systematically to allow easy access at a later date. So store it in a way that should be easily accessible. Moreover, ensure data are stored securely to comply with data protection requirements, such as their specific information, their information which can identify who the person is, should be kept confidential. So there is a very big ethical requirement. So you need to make sure to protect confidentiality of the participants, especially when storing the data and when transporting the data. Always keep a copy of the forms in one location if they are being transported somewhere else, in case if they get damaged or lost during the transportation process. So you may need to have a backup. In the forms or data are particularly, if the forms of data are particularly valuable, then a copy should always be kept in a different place in case of damage or loss, so you can use that backup whenever you want. So that was about the paper forms, and similarly electronic files also need to be stored and transported during the process of research. So identifying details such as names and addresses once again should be hidden and kept confidential, and they should be removed when transporting electronic files. Data files should be password protected and, if possible, encrypted when transporting by post so that they cannot be altered or changed. Keep more than one copy of the data in 2 separate locations in case of computer failure or loss, because if, for example, if computer has some sort of a malfunction, or the hard disk has some sort of malfunction, you can lose the data and you can lose all of your research at that instant. So it may be useful to use file names that show the version of the date where files are updated during the course of study, if you are actually doing analysis again and again and adding variables and subtracting and making corrections. So always save the file with a different name, for example, version 1, version 2, or you can enter the date into the name as well, so you can identify that this was the newer one and this is the older one. So that was all about this section, and I hope you learned something new out of it, and keep on watching sqadia.com for more lectures like this. Thank you very much.